Hello everybody, and as you know, we've been trying to figure out our averages, and in our last video what we found was this error. We go ahead and we hit the compute button, but because we have no values, and let's see if I can bring it up, let's hit stop. I have no values in my text boxes. It just flat out doesn't like it. It's like, what's going on here? I'm supposed to be converting something. In fact, let's do it again so you can see where the error is happening. It says I'm trying to convert some text to a number, but there's no text in there. So how do we fix this? Let's take a look. I'm going to hit stop again, and we are going to do just some simple exception handling here. And we are going to use what they refer to as a try. And as you can see, it's going to have a curly bracket, so it's going to have a nice little scope associated with it, and a catch. And in this case, we're going to do this. Now, really, it almost does exactly what it says it does. It's going to try to do this, and if this doesn't work, it's going to do that. Pretty simple, huh? So if it does this, it's just going to skip over what's ever here. And what do we want it to do? Well, we want to say something to the effect of, well, try this, and if it doesn't work, tell the user you screwed up. And this is kind of the modern way of programming, because I remember using these complex finite element codes and hydrocodes and finite difference codes and all that stuff back in the day, and whenever we had a problem with it and we made a mistake, it was always called user error. It was your fault, you fix it. But as it turns out, the modern consumer nowadays does not want to hear the word user error. They don't want to know it's their fault. What they want to do is have this thing foolproof. And they want to make sure that their device doesn't crash or freeze or whatever whenever they do something wrong. So what you want to do here is use things like the try catch to catch that, so that we don't get that exception that we just saw. And because let's face it, most people don't know how to program, and they're not going to know, well, what's going on. So you're going to tell them what's going on here in the catch statement. Now, can the catch statement do something else? Yeah, I could put all zeros in there. I could put test 1 equals 0, test 2 equals 0. In fact, let's just do that. Test 1 equals 0. And then I'm going to do that, and then that, and we're going to do test 2, 3. That should work. So if I start that and I hit compute, it's going to give me the average of 0. And I guess that makes sense on a certain level, because they haven't put anything in. Therefore, there's nothing, they haven't achieved any grades yet, and therefore they should get a 0. Instead, you might want to actually tell them what's going on, that there is a mistake, and they can do it. Now, the beautiful thing about this, so I'm going to just, well, who knows, maybe we like this. Maybe we'll come back to this. So let's do a multi-line comment and get it out of there. But what I like to do is actually give them a error message, and the nice thing about C# is they have these kind of error messages that could help them out. So I'm going to say message, oops, I forgot to put box, show. We've used that before. This is going to spit out a box on top of this, and we are going to write in the word X. Actually, let's do this first, because it's going to want to autocomplete on me. The first thing you should do is establish this. So we're saying that if there's any mistake here, it's going to throw an exception, and we're going to catch that exception and call it EX. Now what we can say here is we're going to take that EX that we just created up there, that exception that I threw, and we're going to report it back to the user. So I'm going to say X message. And that's what I like about this, because I can be lazy. So I just said, whatever error you get running this, show it directly to the user. And let's put our semicolon there so it doesn't hate me. And it's pretty straightforward. That's all we have to do. So let's go ahead and do that and hit the word compute. And it says input string was not in a correct format. To me, that makes a lot of sense. So if you've got an educated user, they know what that means, right? Input string. Well, these are your input strings. But what happens to the general user? Well, in that case, what you might want to do instead here is maybe anticipate it a little bit. So instead of saying instead of using the X, just writing your own error message, like not all grades were entered. And essentially this will give us the same message box, but now we got a unique one. And it says not all grades were entered. And this is going to, the nice thing about that, it gives me an average of 85. That's funny. And the reason, and there's a good question for you. Why does it give you the average of 85? Well, because we've established the test. We have these initializations. So maybe what we should do is do a 0, 0, 0. The reason why you're going to keep these initialized is because we don't want another error that we have to try and catch for. But we could if we wanted to. When we get down to average, we could say try average, catch, spit out that exception again. But the problem is we already know we got an error, so this would just throw 2 errors in a row. And you don't want to, it's like someone telling you did something wrong 15 times. You don't want, once is enough. So as a programmer, we're going to try to force them, or we're going to force this program to tell them the correct thing. Okay, so now we got that test is equals 0, not all grades were entered, and let's run it one more time. So if it says not all grades were entered, we'll hit OK. Notice what's happening here. We don't get a crash anymore. The program still works, so I can still go back and put numbers in. But let's say I don't put enough numbers in again, I'm going to get that same point, which is actually good because now it allows people to continue to try, or to continue until they do it right. So when I finally put in my last grade here, these are not spectacular grades, but okay, it will work. It won't give that error code, and it'll give the correct answer. Now, since this is a scope, you can also add stuff to this. We could say that average is equals 0, but the problem here is that we re-established the average right there. We refigure it out. So if we do something like that, again, 55, and compute, not all grades were entered, it's still going to give me the 18.33. Why? Because test 1 was 55, this was 0, this was 0, and so 55 divided by 3 gives me that 18.33 number. That average 0 looks and works well, but because it happens before this average is computed, we're kind of stuck. So what can we do here? Again, we could put another try and catch there. We could put another try and catch here. Or we could just simply do this. Take these guys, move them up. And this is a little extra work. And then I'm going to multi-line comment this out. It's getting a little sloppy here. We'll talk about cleaning up your code in future ones. But this at least kind of shows us where we've been. And average, instead of doing that, we're going to say, let's just put 0 here. And to be honest, your average is, why don't we just put this? A little dash and get rid of it. So we're not going to actually write it to the string. And if that's the case, then we don't even need the word average here. We don't even need to figure out the average, right? So now when we run it one more time and we put in 55, 99, and compute, we still get that error, hit OK, and it will not show that average in there. So you have the opportunity of showing that average, which might be a 0, or zeroing out that average, or just, you know, controlling that text box as you need, or that label as you see fit. You could, the last thing I'll say is you could, but I do not suggest that, is actually fill the text box that it's reading from. Because remember, it's reading into test1.txt. You could actually put a number in there, but I don't suggest that, because more times than not, that will blow up in your face. Even when you think you know all the possibilities that could occur there, somebody will say, well, this doesn't make sense. Like you put a 0 in there if it doesn't, if it's not filled. That could work. That could throw people off. So I think the best way is to just leave the absence of information up there. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Thank you.